Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we transform your stack of sources into fascinating insights. Today, we're diving deep into the extraordinary world of Leonardo da Vinci. You probably think you know him, the painter, the inventor, the Renaissance man. But our mission today is to peel back the layers of his genius, explore the vibrant era he shaped, and reveal some truly surprising, maybe even controversial, facts from the sources you've provided. Our goal is really to give you a shortcut to understanding why he remains one of history's most compelling and, frankly, enigmatic figures.
It's so true. You can't really understand Leonardo without first grasping the incredible period he emerged from. He wasn't just in his era, he almost was its embodiment.
And that era, of course, is the Renaissance, a word we hear a lot, but what was this rebirth truly about, and maybe what came before it?
Well, Renaissance literally means rebirth, from the Latin re and naissance. Sometimes people call it the art revival.
Yeah.
To really get it, let's look back. Think ancient Greece, ancient Rome. That was a thriving time, right? Art, philosophy, mathematics, even early democracy. Their art celebrated the human body, beauty, pagan gods.
Right, a real flourishing of creativity and thought. But then came the period often called the Dark Ages or Middle Ages. How did things change then, artistically speaking?
Oh, it was a dramatic shift.
Yeah.
After the Roman Empire fell, Christianity became dominant, and, well, a lot of Roman art and texts were actually destroyed. Temples burned, books lost. Art in the Middle Ages often reflected the suffering plagues, wars, became more abstract. Figures got elongated, meant to symbolize spiritual elevation, and it was almost all religious commissions. Jesus, Mary, moving away from that classical realism.
That is a stark contrast, from celebrating the human body to these abstract spiritual depictions. So how did Europe get from that point to this incredible rebirth? What actually sparked such a huge shift?
Yeah, it wasn't just one thing. It was more like a convergence, several forces coming together. First, you've got the power of wealth, just sheer money. Think families like the Medici in Florence. They made fortunes through banking. They were involved in usury, which, well, the church frowned upon lending money at interest back then. So they were kind of early bankers navigating that. And they became huge patrons of the arts. Commissioning works for churches maybe as a sort of atonement, but also for self-promotion. Art wasn't just art. It always had a purpose, often in public spaces like churches.
Okay, so wealth provided the fuel, but that economic boom also helped something else return, didn't it? Lost knowledge.
Exactly. The Crusades were surprisingly important here. Europeans encountered sophisticated knowledge in the Middle East, things forgotten in Europe. They brought back advanced math like Pythagoras, and crucially, the philosophy of Plato.
Plato and his idea of the one, how did that fit into this new Renaissance mindset?
Right, Plato's idea of the one, this ultimate unity of goodness and beauty, got reinterpreted. They brilliantly connected it to Christian ideas. The one became linked to God. So suddenly, pursuing beauty, studying the world, science, even self-improvement, these weren't seen as purely worldly things anymore. They became ways to get closer to God, to understand the divine. It elevated human effort.
Wow, okay. So an intellectual revival tied to a philosophical shift, which leads us to humanism.
Precisely. As some of that medieval fear started to fade, the focus shifted back onto humanity. The idea emerged that humans, as God's creation, were inherently valuable, worthy of study. So exploring the human body, science, philosophy that was seen as honoring God, not challenging him. Humans became the central subject again, bringing back those Greek and Roman ideals of the perfect form, the musculature.
And people were literally digging up the past too, right? This fascination with antiquity.
Absolutely. Excavating ancient artifacts and sites became a big thing. It was even competitive. Cities like Florence, the Vatican, they wanted to show off their wealth and their connection to that glorious Roman history. All this, the money, the rediscovered knowledge, humanism, the love for antiquity, it created this incredibly fertile ground, just the perfect stage for someone like Leonardo.
And what a stage. Okay, let's turn to the man himself, Leonardo da Vinci. His beginnings were kind of unique, weren't they? Not exactly typical for such a giant figure.
No, not at all. He was born around April 15th, 1452 in Vinci. That's a town in Tuscany. Vinci was his hometown, not, his last name. And the really interesting part is he was the illegitimate son of a notary. Now, that sounds like a disadvantage, but ironically, it kind of freed him. He didn't have the pressure to follow his dad's profession. It let him pursue art really early on.
So a potential social hurdle actually opened a door for him. And how did that early talent develop?
Well, at 14, he moved to Florence, which, as we said, was the place to be. A real hub, perfect environment for him. He started an apprenticeship in Andrea del Verrocchio's workshop. Verrocchio was a master, and like many then, he had assistants working with him.
And that's where we get the famous story about the baptism of Christ, isn't it? The moment his genius really burst onto the scene.
That's the one. Leonardo was tasked with painting the angels in that piece. And he used these new oil paint technique and pretty revolutionary stuff to get softer faces, deeper colors. He created this kind of blurred effect, a precursor to his famous sfumato. His work was apparently so good that Vasari, the biographer, claimed Verrocchio saw it and just never picked up a brush again. Said his student had surpassed him. Whether that's literally true or not, the painting is seen as Leonardo's artistic birth, you know?
What an entrance. But despite that amazing start and his incredible fame later, our sources point out this surprising paradox. Leonardo was known for not finishing a lot of his work. How does that square up? Fewer than 20 completed pieces.
It is a paradox, isn't it? Fewer than 20 completed paintings. He often left commissions unfinished. Sometimes didn't even get paid for them. It wasn't laziness, though. It seems to have been this relentless pursuit of perfection, or maybe just getting fascinated by the next experiment. He was so driven by curiosity, by the next idea, that he'd often move on before something was, well, done in the traditional sense. One source called him the master of not finishing anything, but it came from that drive.
That drive, that constant quest for understanding, it really comes through in his notebooks. He was so much more than just a painter, wasn't he? The ultimate Renaissance man.
Oh, absolutely. His notebook was incredible. Thousands of sketches, many are in Dublin, actually. He drew everything he saw. It was his way of understanding the world. And these sketches show he wasn't just an artist. He was an inventor, an engineer.
Yeah.
Way ahead of his time.
What are some examples from those notebooks that really stand out? Things that make you go, wow.
I mean, it's mind-blowing. He sketched early ideas for tanks, even supposedly built one that exploded. Flying machines, obviously, inspired by birds. Designs for steamships. And things still relevant today, like canal locks. The mechanism he designed is basically the same one used in places like Klong Mon near Wat Horan in Thailand. He just seamlessly blended math, engineering, science, art. Everything fed everything else.
And it wasn't just machines. He had this deep, almost obsessive interest in human anatomy.
He really did. It stemmed from his art, his belief that to paint a person accurately, even clothed, you had to understand the nude form underneath. And to paint skin convincingly, you needed to understand the skeleton and muscles. So he did dissections, which, had been forbidden but was coming back for medical study. He meticulously sketched everything, fetuses, detailed faces, and of course the super famous Vitruvian Man.
Ah, the Vitruvian Man, such an iconic image. What's the story behind that one? What does it tell us about how he blended art and science?
Well, it starts with Vitruvius, an ancient Roman architect. Yeah. He argued architecture should follow natural principles, using human proportions as a guide. Leonardo took that idea and ran with it, but in his own meticulous way. Get this. He was so obsessed with getting it right that he measured over 10 different naked models, just to find the average human proportions. That's applying a scientific method to art.
10 models, just to find the average. That's, wow. What does that obsessive detail tell you about his whole approach?
It just shows his core belief, right? That observation, measurement, experimentation, that's how you uncover universal truths. He figured out how the perfect human body fits within both a square and a circle. But his really groundbreaking discovery was pinpointing the centers. The center of the square is the genitals, he found, while the center of the circle is the navel. And he recorded other ratios too, like face width compared to hairline, face length compared to the distance from navel to genitals. It wasn't just drawing. It was a scientific investigation into the code of the human form, trying to find that divine order in our physical makeup.
From the human body to maybe the most famous human gaze in history. Let's talk Mona Lisa. It's arguably the world's most famous painting, but it's wrapped in so much mystery.
Oh, absolutely. A global icon. And surprisingly small when you see it in the Louvre. Its history is pretty dramatic, too. It's been a target for obsession, theft, vandalism. An Italian guy tried to steal it back in 1911. There was an acid attack in the 50s. Someone threw a rock in the 70s. Even recently, 2009, an angry elderly woman threw a cup at it. It's definitely survived a lot.
It's not just famous, it's a survivor.
Yeah.
And its cultural impact is immense, right? Inspiring modern artists like will.i.am, Beyonce. But technically, what makes it so special, beyond just the enigmatic smile?
So several things make it captivating. First, the framing is really intimate. It's cropped close, pulling you right in. Then there's the use of aerial perspective. See how the background seems to fade into this hazy, almost imaginary distance? That creates incredible depth. But the big one, the technique everyone talks about, is sfumato.
Right, sfumato, that smoky or fading effect that seems key to the whole mystery.
Exactly. Sfumato means smoked or blurred in Italian. He achieved it by applying countless super thin layers of translucent paint, almost like glazes. This creates incredibly soft, blurred edges, especially around the eyes and the corners of the mouth. There are hardly any hard lines, and that's what gives this smile that elusive quality. It seems to change depending on how you look at it. It keeps you guessing.
And speaking of guessing, the identity of the woman herself is still debated. What's the generally accepted story?
The standard story, the one most accepted, is that it was commissioned by a Florentine cloth merchant, Francesco del Giocondo, and the subject is his wife, Lisa Gherardini. So Mona Lisa, meaning something like Madame. That's why his French name is La Gioconda, likely after the husband's name.
But our sources mention some other pretty intriguing theories that challenge that traditional view.
Oh yeah, there's the whole Dan Brown Da Vinci Code stuff about hidden symbols, or even that it's a self-portrait of Leonardo in disguise. But a more serious, compelling theory, explored by some art historians, is that the model might actually have been a man. Specifically, Salai. He was Leonardo's student, companion, maybe lover, lived with him for about 20 years from the age of 10. And significantly, Leonardo kept the Mona Lisa with him his entire life. He never gave it to the person who commissioned it. He eventually left it to Salai in his will.
That is fascinating that he kept it so close. And didn't you mention something about his health potentially playing a role in its unfinished state?
Right. Later in life, Leonardo suffered a stroke which apparently paralyzed his right hand. So maybe he couldn't quite achieve the final touches he wanted. It raises the possibility that in his eyes it was never truly finished. He was known to travel with it, constantly tinkering.
Okay, so if we entertain the Salai theory for a moment, what might that suggest about Leonardo's personal life influencing his art?
Well, if you look at other paintings, where Salai is known to have been the model, like Bacchus or St. John the Baptist, some see facial similarities to the Mona Lisa. And interestingly, there's a preparatory sketch for that St. John the Baptist that clearly shows an erect penis. It suggests a kind of sexual tension or ambiguity that was softened or removed in the final painting. We also know from historical context that homosexuality wasn't exactly hidden in Renaissance Florence, especially in artistic circles. The term Florentine was even used as slang for gay sometimes. And Leonardo himself was actually arrested once, accused of sodomy along with some other artists and a male prostitute. His connections to the Medici probably helped him get out of that trouble. But it adds a layer, considering the Salai theory alongside this context, it offers a different lens on the work.
Moving from the personal to the professional, Leonardo had some intense rivalries, none bigger than with Michelangelo, right? How did those two giants get along? Or not get along?
Oh, it was legendary. A real clash of titans. Michelangelo was younger, also from Tuscany, and just as formidable. Their relationship was famously prickly. For instance, Leonardo criticized Michelangelo's David. He argued the muscles were too defined for a figure supposedly at rest, implying Michelangelo didn't quite understand anatomy in motion, or rather, repose.
Ouch. And Michelangelo, known for having a bit of a temper, fired back.
Absolutely. He hit Leonardo where it hurt, basically accusing him of never finishing anything he started, which, as we've said, wasn't entirely untrue. Their biggest face-off was probably in 1503. They were both commissioned to paint huge battle scenes on opposite walls in the Palazzo Vecchio in Florence. Da Vinci's Battle of Anghiari versus Michelangelo's Battle of Cancina. It felt like a deliberate setup, a competition.
And in true to form, neither painting was ever completed. A kind of monument to their rivalry, maybe.
Sadly, yes, neither was finished. It's also interesting how their techniques differed, especially with murals. Leonardo's Last Supper was this disastrous experiment using oil paint on dry plaster. It started deteriorating almost immediately because the paint didn't bind properly. It's needed countless restorations. Michelangelo, on the other hand, stuck to traditional fresco painting on wet plaster for the Sistine Chapel ceiling. And look how well that's lasted. A masterclass in the classic technique.
Despite the rivalry, it's clear they were hugely respected. Even Raphael, another great, paid tribute to them in his own work.
He did, yeah. Raphael, known for his really graceful, harmonious style, painted the School of Athens. And in that famous fresco, he used Leonardo as the model for Plato, the central figure. And he depicted Michelangelo as the brooding philosopher Heraclitus, sitting off to the side. It's a beautiful acknowledgement of their stature, immortalizing them even while they were still working, despite all the friction.
So as we look at Leonardo's final chapter, even his last grand commission, that huge bronze horse sculpture, went unfinished. It really is a theme, but maybe not a failure.
It's kind of a poignant echo, isn't it? The Bronze Horse Project really shows his dedication to innovation, always pushing boundaries rather than just repeating successes. Unlike Michelangelo, who sometimes revisited popular themes, Leonardo seemed driven by the next challenge, the next experiment. So, yeah, many things remained in progress. His mind was always racing ahead.
And how did this incredible life, filled with so much genius and that constant curiosity, finally end?
Leonardo died in 1519. He was 67. It was likely complications from that stroke that had paralyzed his right hand. And the really touching details that he died in France, apparently in the arms of the king, Francis I. It just shows how beloved he was, how revered across Europe, his ultimate legacy. It's immense. He fundamentally changed what it meant to be an artist, not just a craftsman, but a thinker, an innovator, a genius. His relentless quest for knowledge, his experimental methods, the deep questions he asked about humanity, that's why his work, especially the Mona Lisa, still fascinates us. It's still full of mystery and inspires endless questions.
What's really striking when you lay it all out is how Leonardo's life, full of these incredible achievements, but also these famous unfinished projects. Maybe that wasn't a flaw at all. Maybe it was just proof of his boundless curiosity, his need to keep experimenting.
Exactly. If you think about the bigger picture, his journey kind of reminds us that real genius isn't always about neat completion. Sometimes it's in that relentless, maybe even messy, pursuit of understanding. It's having the courage to keep pushing, even if you don't always reach a final destination.
That definitely leaves us with something to think about. For you, the listener, maybe consider in your own life or work what unfinished things might actually be the best reflections of your own learning, your own exploration.
And if you want to dive even deeper into all this, the book Leonardo da Vinci, published by Being, is a great resource. It goes into even more fascinating detail about his extraordinary life.